Today we're going to take a look at the Boker Kwaiken. This is a knife that traditionally was used in Japan by wives of the samurai, and it was a small dagger that they were to carry with them at all times. Not necessarily in the folding type knife. This was a fixed blade knife, but it was used for household tasks, but it was also used as a self-defense weapon inside close quarters. It was a lot easier to maneuver than the samurai sword or any kind of larger blade, and they were to have these on them at all times. Ended up that the samurai themselves began to carry these for different utility tasks, but one of the things that's kind of a dark side of the Kwaiken is that it was used as a ritual suicide instrument. And this really cuts the veins and arteries in the neck, in fact specifically the left side, and so that was one of its uses. One thing too, if the samurai was injured to where he was incapacitated, the wife was to take his life with the Kwaiken and then take her own. But today we have the Boker Kwaiken, and this is actually a copper version, and it's an exclusive from Going Gear. And man, is it smooth. Now, this is the mini version of the Kwaiken, and the designer is Lucas Burnley. He actually started out making a fixed blade version, which is the original Japanese version. There's a lot of criticism about the blade shape and different things because of the thinness of the blade. And one of the things, though, that you need to make note of is that this is from an ancient Japanese design. During that time, they lived by the blade, and so this is a special purpose knife, honestly. Again, it's a very different style, and so it's not necessarily what falls into modern blade designs, but I think Lucas Burnley did a great job in bringing it back to life. It's a great utility knife. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with this in everyday task, not necessarily in a survival situation. This was really made not only for utility, but also, again, like we talked about, a ritual suicide knife. So to me, this would make a great EDC flipper. It's just very fine and definitely somewhat of a self-defense knife, except that the scales are so just smooth. I mean, they're just super smooth. Even the back is just very finely finished. You can see from the top, it's almost like a work of art. I mean, I think it really brings the Eastern culture into this knife. Now, one thing about this knife in particular is that it is the copper scales, which is only from Going Gear. That's the only place you can get it. But there are about 50 different designs of the Kwaiken, and even fixed blade designs. I mean, there's a number of different ones you can get, and that goes more toward the traditional way that these were used. This copper, though, will patina over time. And to give you a prime example is this key bar in raw copper, and it just gets a really kind of vintage look in not a lot of time. I mean, and it just continues. And of course, all the high areas where you're rubbing and using it, you're going to have those just like a penny. So after a while, this will kind of turn into that patina color. It is wrapped, sealed, so when you get it, it's not necessarily going to start turning until you unwrap it. I've had this out for a couple of days so far, and not really used it a lot because I didn't want to scratch it up too much for the review. Now, it does have a stonewash finish, so it's kind of a matte finish. You have your screws here to be able to remove the scales, and then of course on the other side the same thing. Now we have our clip. It's really not a deep pocket clip, but it does have some pretty good spring to it. In fact, it took me a little while to get used to putting it in my pocket because that spring is really tight and that lip is not that pronounced. But once I kind of got the hang of it, it was really simple to do. The clip is dedicated to one side, and it is dedicated to tip-up carry. So once you put this in your pocket, right side, you're pretty much set. In the pocket, you can see where it rides. You have a little bit here. It's not super deep, but man, is that smooth. The clip's takes a little bit of getting used to, especially with this double seam right here. But once you get the hang of it, it slides right in. Pretty secure too. It could come out possibly, but man, I like this. Also, we have this lanyard hole right here. You can use it as a neck knife, you can use it for just having a lanyard to keep it secure, or just a little paracord weave. So let's just deploy the knife and we'll talk about the blade. The blade itself is made from VG10 steel, so it's a pretty high quality steel blade. It's a cobalt alloy. It has kind of an upsweep on the blade, so if you're looking at it straight across, it starts to come up just a little bit. There is somewhat of a thickness to the blade I really like, and then how it comes and then comes together and then comes back out for a very strong tip. It is hollow ground. One of the big things though about this, if you're going to take this knife apart, let's say you get it really dirty, the IKBS ball bearings are not held into any kind of mount, and so when you open this up, they're going to go everywhere. So if you do disassemble this knife for cleaning, or you just are curious, you want to have this over something to be able to put those ball bearings back, because they're really small and tiny, and it can be kind of rough to get those back together. The blade itself is 3 inches long. It is super sharp, and it's just very well finished. I mean, the knife itself, to me, has a very sleek look to it. I love the back. It has stainless steel liners, which make this knife fairly heavy. It is a flow-through design, and this back spacer is kind of a different color. I mean, at first I thought maybe it was brass, but it may be just anodized to kind of give it just a little bit of an offset with the stainless and then with the copper. But I really like how clean the lines are on the liner. But again, this knife is fairly heavy at 5 ounces, and that has a lot to do with the copper, but it has a lot to do with the stainless steel. The handle itself is 4.2 inches in length, and the overall length is 7 1/4 inches. It's a very sleek, beautiful knife, but one of the things about it, because it is so compact, it's almost dense. It has such a weight to it. But this is really, to me, a very specialty type knife. I mean, with the copper, I really like the copper color, and definitely just the metal itself. It kind of goes away from a lot of the traditional, type, whether it's G10, carbon fiber, or whatever, it kind of gives it just a totally vintage, very classy look. Of course, the only protrusion really from the knife is the flipper, and it does have jimping right here. Now, I noticed that some of the early models did not have the jimping, and it was kind of difficult to be able to grab. But as you can see, I mean, it just comes right out. Even though this is actually pretty minimal. So when it does come out, the jimping now is at the bottom. So if you're going to use this knife, you can grab hold of it and really be able to bear down a little better than if this was just smooth. So I like that feature. And then the closure, look how smooth that is. It waits until it gets all the way down before it catches. Right there. This knife is effortless to flip out. I mean, you barely touch it. You can feel how smooth it is. Sometimes with flippers they can be a little bit gritty and a little bit tough to get that flipper, but this one, it's one of the smoothest knives I've deployed. Just comes out really slick. Of course, with a lot of the different copper accessories, whether it's my little Olight copper, my key bar that's copper, this little Mech Army flashlight, and the Minuteman lighter, toe hill lighter. This just has a copper anodized finish, and then I have my pennies. Of course, then we have copper and brass, my favorite. The centering, as you can see, looks pretty good. It's just a really beautiful knife. If you look down inside, you'll notice that the stainless steel liners are not skeletonized, so that adds to the weight as well. So it gives a really full feel to it. And it is a liner lock, which I really didn't quite mention, but very easy to deploy. You can do it with one hand, but you want to be careful because, again, that blade is really sharp. Now we have Boker Plus on the blade, which denotes that this is an imported knife. I did notice that it is made in Taiwan. They are doing some really good steels out of Asia, and so I would not hesitate to buy a knife, even this kind of price range, for this kind of quality. Then here on the other side we have Burnley, which is for Lucas Burnley. We have the IKBS logo right there, and then we have the steel content, which is VG10. And then we have a serial number right here on the blade, which is 0555. Now, as far as some pros and cons, I really like the design. It's a very sleek design. It's very compact. It's going to ride in your pocket really easily. I like how this flows out. Very nice. Now, one thing about it, when you do it slowly, if I can get it to do it slowly, you can feel the ball bearing system is smooth. So I really like how slick and smooth it is. I love the copper scales. That's just a beautiful feature, especially since I have a lot of copper that I like to carry for my EDC. That's one of the things, guys, is right now we have so many choices. And you can tailor your EDC to whatever that suits you. And, you know, you can go from simple, inexpensive, and still get a good quality knife, or you can, you know, spend a little bit and just have something really nice. And to me, if I'm going to carry something on a regular basis, I want it to be nice. You know, other things don't matter, but things that I carry every day, I like for them to be high quality, and I like the styling. I think that really adds to it. Now, as far as cons go, the IKBS system is excellent, and it makes it really smooth. But if you're going to disassemble this knife, it's going to be a nightmare. A lot of people will actually take and put the knife over like a pan or a bag or something like that, because you don't want to lose those ball bearings, and there are a ton of them. So that would be one con, I think, if you like to take your knives apart. I typically don't. But let's say you drop this into a sandy pool or something, and you get some kind of grit down in there that you just can't get out. You know, that would definitely be one thing. Also, the weight. I mean, 5 ounces is pretty heavy for this size knife. I mean, I have a lot of knives that are larger that weigh 5 ounces, and, you know, it's just one of those things. But because it's so compact, you don't notice it quite as well. And, of course, the copper and the steel add to that. I mean, that's what really makes this a heavy knife. You're going to beat up this knife a little bit. It's going to show some marks because copper is a lot softer. But I think in the long run, that's going to add to the aesthetics of the knife. Also, the clip is a little bit high. I would like to see it a little bit lower, but because the knife is so thin, you would have to lose the lanyard hole. And I really like that feature. It's just nice to have that, whether you use it or not. But it's good to have it. And also, this tip right here, which is really a pro, is that it gives you something to be able to grab hold of if you wanted to use this as a self-defense option. It gives you a little bit of a corner there, and so I like that. The price is $149 on the Going Gear website, and this is an exclusive, but most of these knives are around that price range, or maybe a little less. Sometimes when you get the carbon fiber and the titaniums, you know, they run actually a little more. But actually, a good friend of mine sent this knife to me, JC, and I want to thank him for sending this. Just a really good friend, and I really appreciate it because this is such a beautiful blade. So. But also, again, I'm good friends with Marshall at Going Gear, so I thought it would be a good tie-in to be able to say that this knife is available at Going Gear, and I think and Going Gear has a ton of different knives, flashlights, and a lot of other things that are great for EDC. If you're looking for EDC stuff, that is a great source, and you can go to goinggear.com, or if you're ever in the Atlanta or Smyrna, Georgia area, right outside of Atlanta, visiting their store is an experience. And I always come away from there with a lot of stuff. So would I carry this as an EDC? You bet I would. You know, this is something that I just like. A lot of times, if they are a little heavier, I don't mind carrying them if it's something that I just really like, something that suits me. And even though this is not necessarily a defensive knife per se, because really you need a little bit longer length for the blade, it definitely can, you know, be a good standoff, and it's definitely better than a sharp stick. Now again, I want to thank JC for sending the knife. This is a beautiful knife that goes well with my other pocket EDC items. But this is an exclusive again from Going Gear, and you need to go to goinggear.com to get these, which will go great if you're carrying any kind of copper for EDC. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. Now the price on the Boker in ancient Japan. Release the Kwaiken. You know, if you pull this out, someone's going to be quaking in their boots. While this is not going to be really compared to it's a cobalt ally. I mean, and in the pocket, and in the pocket. Now the price on the Boker Kwaiken, Boker Kwaiken, Boker Kwaiken. How about Boker Kwaiken? And again, JC, thank you. What a nice surprise, Clark.